when Kyrie first came to Brooklyn, he talked about his failed leadership in Boston and how I think the death of his grandfather, affected him towards the end of his stint there. And, for a while at the start, he was pretty good to deal with from a access perspective. It's not like he was giving one-on-ones or anything early on, but I remember speaking to Jack McMullen, like her ESPN story that fall of 2019, that the Nets were already kind of worried about him, which has aged terrifically. You know, um, I remember he was classified as moody, and like 2 or 3 games into his stint, he's already answering questions about his behavior and how he can kind of shut off a bit. And I remember him kind of like saying pretty direct. This is during post-game locker room scrums back in the day. I'm proud of who I am. And he was playing terrific. He had 50 in his first game, and then he injured his shoulder on a layup against the Pelicans, and then it kind of got weird where he just stopped being in the lineup. I remember his last game was in mid-November in Denver, because that was Amon Shumpert's first game because he came in as I'm trying to remember who they signed a 10-day for with him. But for a while, we just heard nothing on Kyrie. Kenny Atkinson who was the coach at the time, didn't have much to say on it. It's kind of now been revealed he was looking at multiple doctors and not exactly solely listening to the Nets medical staff. He was seeking his own opinions. I think there was something that he was like out in Arizona for one of them. Then he gets a cortisone shot. He comes back in January that year, and a couple things happened in that stretch. One of my first one-on-one dealings with him, I'm from New Jersey. Kyrie's from New Jersey. We're 3 years apart. We have a lot of mutual acquaintances, I guess I would say. His high school's a straight shot up on the highway from where I live. And like Jay did a St. Pat's story on him. For those of you who don't know, St. Pat's, was and still kind of is now knows the Patrick School, NBA powerhouse. Al Harrington went there. Jonathan Kuminga on the Warriors. Kyrie, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. I had heard he was helping out at practices while injured with the Nets. And so again, I know a lot of, St. Pat's played against my high school. And I went up there for a story on what Kyrie does helping these kids at practice. And I wasn't really expecting him to be there. I was expecting to get, kind of like a right around type deal, just going, given he was hurt. And the high school coach says to me, I'm waiting outside in the lobby of this place. And he goes, like, where are you? I was like, I'm outside in the lobby. He goes, Kyrie's talking to the team. Get in here. And, I kind of try to slowly enter the room and everything. And of course, the door makes this loud creak and everyone's looking at me. He's like, Kyrie looks at me. He's like, hello, what's going on? Take a seat. And, he was great to me that night. There was I watched the whole practice. His dad and Godfather Rod Strickland were there. And I it's funny, people talk about it sometimes, when you get these exclusive, what goes through your head. And I was nervous when I saw that he was there, just because it's like there was all this mystery about his shoulder. Like, is he gonna yell at me? Like, what are you doing here? Like, I'm almost like the paparazzi. And he couldn't be more accommodating. He pulled me out in the hallway to make sure I got, it was quiet when I talked to him about the whole thing. He thanked me later that day for it. And the whole time going through my eyes, as I'm watching him run the practice, is like, I have 2 hours with Kyrie Irving all by myself, and it's my first year on the beat. Hopefully he doesn't think I'm here for his shoulder, and hopefully I don't screw this up. And it was, him and I had a good rapport for a while after that. We would talk Jersey basketball. And even during some of the tougher times of his life, I mean, the death of Kobe obviously happened when the Nets were at Madison Square Garden. He wasn't there that day, but then, he has that 50-point game coming back. He sprains his knee, which ultimately ended his first season a couple days later. And I remember him walking across the locker room on crutches to talk to us when he didn't have to. So, his first year, he was very accommodating, all things considered, even though he only played 20 games. And then COVID happened, the NBA bubble and his role and all that happened. And, before his second season with the Nets, we all got that email from his publicist. A note from Kyrie Irving was the subject, and that he wasn't going to be talking to us that year, when we didn't even do anything. And that's, I believe, when he tweeted that he called us pawns. And that, the relationship with we only covered him 20 games. It's not like we did anything to him. I mean, he played great those 20 games. I don't remember the record off the top of my head. I think it was closer to 500 than a winning one. But after that, I mean, it was never really the same with the local media, because then there was the vaccine mandate. He had that 50-40-90 season, that second year in Brooklyn. He was the most reliable of him, KD, and James Harden. if he doesn't land on Giannis and sprain his ankle in that playoff series against the Bucks, I think they were winning the whole thing, maybe even without James Harden. But then the vaccine mandate stuff came up. He obviously refused to comply with it, and I mean, from there on, it was always a bit contentious. He would still be decent at times and respectful, and still you can make some small talk with him. But really, ever since that second part of that second season when the note from him came, that email, and also that time where he just didn't show up to the arena, and he had that he was later found to be at a birthday party and all that. It's interesting. That was all over Zoom access, but you could just kind of tell like Steve Nash was having his first, Kyrie experience where like he just had no idea what was going on, had no idea what to say. And that was an interesting dynamic in the locker room too, because the whole team, Kevin and Kyrie are like the leaders, but no one really knew what was going on. And it was just this weird deal of like, do you say something? Do you not say something talking to guys? And no one really even knows what was going on, let alone to comment on it. And that was, again, when there was no open locker room or anything. So definitely that second season, kind of like what Jay was saying, where the first one was relatively smooth riding, all things considered, just, it changed after that. And it's kind of tie a bow on. I mean, I saw Jay last week when the Nets were in Boston. You talk about his unhappiness, the way he talked about the Celtics after that blowout loss. I don't even remember what the score differential was, Jay, but it,
139 to 96.
Yeah, it was over 3 minutes in. He'd been complimentary of the Celtics before. He had talked about, I've known these guys since they were pups. This doesn't surprise me what they're doing, but he essentially said, it's clear as day to me that the Celtics have their eye on the title and they're not messing around in the regular season. And tonight we were just a team that got in the way. We were all kind of debating how he sounded after that, because as you talked about the bullshit meter, Tim, I think we all just kind of, our senses are what they are, and you kind of are around the guy enough to where you can kind of tell when something, they're saying something that they usually don't say. Him talking about the Celtics, it was almost like wistful, like he was kind of envious of what they had going on compared to the Nets, where he has to pilot the ship until Kevin's back, and here's this team that he left that's just rolling over teams left and right and not messing around. So that, when the trade request came in Friday, my first thought was thinking about his comments Wednesday and how he almost kind of seemed like envious of the situation that he left to be in now.